The Allen Lund Company is celebrating 48 years in transportation. Stop by and see us at Matt's, booth 18193.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Confused by the Department of Labor's new worker classification rule? Well, you're not alone. The change has some people scratching and shaking their heads, but the sky is not falling. Jamie Jones and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine join news anchor Scott Thompson to break down the new rule. From a fire crew that rescued a trucker dangling from a bridge to a federal agency whose certification process is creating problems for truckers, S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Tyson Fisher tell us who in recent news has been good and who's been bad with some roses and raspberries. And finally, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance recently announced the dates for its annual Roadcheck Safety Blitz. We'll get an idea of what truckers need to know about the annual event from CVSA Roadside Inspection Specialist Jeremy Disbrow. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is encouraging truck drivers to speak up about predatory lease purchase agreements. Later this month, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration will be hosting a truck leasing task force meeting at the Mid-America Trucking Show in Louisville, Kentucky. Sandwiched into two separate sessions will be two public comment periods. OOIDA says this is a prime chance to tell FMCSA and the Truck Leasing Task Force about how predatory leasing arrangements impact potential owner-operators and small trucking businesses. Congress established the Truck Leasing Task Force with the goal of ending predatory lease purchase arrangements in the trucking industry. The task force has addressed issues in the lease purchase model in previous meetings. They've shared the horror stories and pointed out the problems, and the public comment period is an opportunity to share your story. The task force might also benefit from hearing whether there are models out there that are working, something task force member Steve Vaselli, an economic sociologist at the University of Pennsylvania, pointed out in January's meeting.
I keep on the table why we should try to save this model. I think it's an important question for us to continue to analyze, and whether or not it should be saved. I would propose, at least now, we keep that on the table as part of our potential recommendation at the end. If there are some good truck leasing models out there, and I've heard rumor of such, then we should invite them to talk to us. What makes their truck leasing program successful? And I would bet they have an important perspective on the people who they're competing with.
There are a couple of ways to participate in the task force meeting at MATS. If you're on site at the Kentucky Expo Center, you do not need to register in advance, although you're encouraged to do so. Online participants, however, must register for the meeting by March 14th. For a link to do just that, head to landlinenow.com. Side underride crashes will be the focus of the next meeting of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Advisory Committee on Underride Protection. The committee, which is tasked with finding ways to reduce underride crashes, will meet virtually on Wednesday. It'll mark the committee's fourth meeting since May of last year, but the first to focus specifically on side underride guards. That is notable given that NHTSA is considering a potential side underride guard mandate on tractor trailers. The committee's recommendations could play a big role in how the agency decides to proceed. The public is invited to attend via Zoom. We've got a link to register for that as well at landlinenow.com. The committee currently has two more meetings after Wednesday on the books, on April 24th and May 22nd. For the first time in more than 4 months, a U.S. Senator has signed on to co-sponsor the Senate version of the DRIVE Act. That's the bill that would bar FMCSA from imposing a speed limit or mandate. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma is the bill's 10th co-sponsor in the Senate. A companion piece of legislation in the House currently has 38 co-sponsors. FMCSA plans to publish a supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking this coming May, at which time the agency is likely to reveal what it has in mind for a top speed. The saga of A1's towing in Memphis continues. The latest, the city's transportation committee voting to temporarily suspend the company's towing permit. It's related to the flood of complaints filed against A1's towing over recent months, including allegations of booting and towing semis from truck stops and then charging thousands of dollars to release the vehicles. Memphis city officials voted unanimously on Thursday to issue a 30-day suspension over ordinance violations. We have been through this before, though. A similar suspension was handed down in November following complaints from motor carriers, but the company got back to work after that 30-day window was up. A1's Towing has responded to the allegations before denying them outright, saying what they're doing violates no law. Chevron Renewable Energy Group is shuttering operations indefinitely at its biodiesel plants in Ralston, Iowa and Madison, Wisconsin. The Carroll Times-Herald reports the Iowa facility has been in operation since 2002, but has been idled since December. The Madison plant began operations in 2007. Between the two facilities, 50 million gallons of biodiesel were produced annually. However, the production of biodiesel is more expensive than that of conventional diesel, and biodiesel has seen a steady decline in market value in recent months. Yet another CMV enforcement blitz is on the books. This one is in Arizona. The state DOT there announcing plans for 2 days of special commercial vehicle safety enforcement along Interstate 10 starting March 19th. It's being dubbed Operation Full House. The focus will be on the I-10 Ehrenberg port of entry near the California state line. The Arizona DOT says more than 50 inspectors will take part, targeting driver qualifications, hours of service compliance, and looking for any safety violations. Travel Centers of America has announced a new initiative to commemorate International Women's Day on this Friday. TA announced a renewed focus on elevating safety standards at truck stops. As part of the initiative, TA has formed a women's safety advisory group made up of women truckers and industry professionals. They'll advise the company on ways to create safer travel centers for all TA guests, regardless of gender. TA says that 43% of its workforce and 12% of all U.S. truck drivers are women. A reminder to set your clocks ahead 1 hour this weekend. Daylight saving time begins early Sunday morning, meaning one less hour on that day. It also is a more dangerous time on roadways. A University of Colorado study published in 2020 found a 6% spike in deadly car crashes nationwide in the week after we spring forward. The study connected an average of 28 deaths each year to daylight saving time. A number of states have moved to eliminate the time change twice a year to either keep daylight saving time year-round or to abandon it altogether. But any bill that might pass and be signed into state law would be toothless until the U.S. Congress acts. And finally, a quick programming note. Landline Now will be airing at a different time starting Monday, March 11th. 1 hour earlier to be exact, Monday through Friday. At 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on Road Dog Trucking. Same show, just a different time, again starting this coming Monday. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Trot Rainey of Lawrenceville, Virginia. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 13 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 98 years without causing a single accident. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Savannah TA Truck Stop in Richmond Hill, Georgia. That's located at Exit 87 on Interstate 95. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, Scott Thompson discusses the new worker classification rule and more with Jamie Jones and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Tyson Fisher tell us who in recent news has been good and who's been bad with some Roses and Razzberries. And I'll discuss the CVSA's upcoming Roadcheck safety blitz with roadside inspection specialist Jeremy Disbrow. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the program. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Welcome back to Landline Now. The Labor Department is once again taking heat over another policy. Its new worker classification rule is being challenged now on a number of fronts, but the issue, quite frankly, is a complicated one. Here to uncomplicate it for us so we can understand what's going on better, Jamie Jones and Mark Schirmer of Landline Magazine, the Final Rule Whisperers, Department of Labor Whisperers. I don't know. We'll come up with a cool nickname for you guys. How are we doing?
Keep working on it.
Yeah, we'll workshop it. We're also going to let you cook here, Jamie, in just a little bit on a new bill that's ruffling some feathers. But first, these challenges to the new worker classification rule, which is set to go into effect on March 11th. This is complicated. As I said, I want to make sure we understand what this rule will do, particularly for owner-operators. Mark, you are tasked with making this as easy to understand as we possibly can make it.
Yeah, breaking down 339 pages of legalese into something that
start
can
with page
make
one.
Sense. I think the easiest way to kind of look at this is basically what this would do for the most part is go back to the rule that was before the Trump era rule, and it is the goal is to look at the totality of circumstances and really kind of break down whether or not you are an employee or an independent contractor. The concern over this is that this is, worker classification has become a huge hot button and controversial issue. AB 5, California. Julie Su, who was the labor commissioner in California at the time, is now the leader of the U.S. Department of Labor. So it doesn't take a whole lot of surprises to be concerned and why people are thinking, okay, we're going to go to this and we're going to have a strict ABC test. But you go through it, this does not appear to be the ABC test. It doesn't appear to be AB 5. But we won't really know. Like I said, there's 339 pages. This doesn't take effect until March 11th, but we have to see how it'll play out in the courts. I mean, that's really going to be how it comes down, to be able to a real good idea of how this will play out.
I mean, the reality is the lawsuits are drafted. It's just, it has to go into effect. I mean, there are actual attorney clerks with their tennis shoes on ready to run these lawsuits to the courthouse. So, I mean, we know.
On your marks, get set, go.
When you have 339 pages of the devil in the details, that's a lot of litigation potential. So we know that this is where this is heading, which inevitably will just further complicate the process as it gets sorted out, if you will. I mean, it's a mess.
And one big thing to think about, we talk about this from trucking. To make this even more complicated, this isn't just trucking. This is all industries. So to figure out exactly, like they might have the intention for this to work and maybe they think it works for freelance riders or this type of industry or, Uber drivers. But how does it work in trucking and interstate commerce and all of that? It's really difficult for this all to shake out. And for me to tell you this is exactly how it's going to go, I can't do that. But, I think for the most part, I don't think this would be a major change for drivers out there, but there's no promises. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out.
I think it's really important to talk about the fact that there does need to be some distinction out there between independent contractors and employees, and especially speaking about trucking.
Oh, yeah.
Because what you see are people who are not independent contractors in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And they are not getting the benefits due them in the form of insurance and things like that. And it's just motor carriers shoving them over in this independent contractor label so that they can avoid their responsibilities as an employer. So, the reform has to happen. And it's easy for us, like you said, to look at it very narrowly in trucking. And trucking is a diverse industry
100%.
with a ton of laws that we have to navigate to get a definition out there. But the reform is needed. It's just, how do you go about it, and how will it withstand litigation on the other side of it?
Yeah, and as you mentioned that, we also have these resolutions that have been introduced in Congress by Representative Kiley of California. No fan of Julie Sue. I think it's safe to say
I think that's fair.
And Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, I believe,
Correct.
as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But that kind of underscores your point, Jamie, in that, we've got these, legal attorneys out there that are ready to file lawsuits. We've got these resolutions. I wonder how much of this is due to the fact that Julie Sue is leading this charge too, because she does bring out strong emotions, and she was tied to AB5 in California, so it's understandable. But I think that is probably churning up some of this angst as well when we look at the entire situation.
Well, you look at it. I mean, this is obviously politically fueled at this point in time. Right now, there are 54 co-sponsors in the House, 31 in the Senate. No surprise, they're all Republicans on this. So that's the concern. But yeah, it goes back to that California AB5. No secret, OIDA is opposed to it, and it's really just. It's taking a hatchet to the problem as opposed to a scalpel, which is what is needed. And we talk about these predatory lease purchase agreements. There are major issues out there. There are definitely drivers that are misclassified, but there are also real leased on independent owner operators that have had a good business model for decades, and we don't need that taken away from them and to hurt their livelihoods when things are working out well for them. So you just need to find that perfect balance, and it's not easy to do, and they haven't pulled it off quite yet.
Yeah, I think the wait and see approach is really where we are right now, just to see, as you pointed out, Mark, how this affects people out there. And I guess we will see, but we'll wait for those lawsuits. We'll see how this resolution plays out there in Congress as well. I want to shift gears here to a new bill in the U.S. House introduced by Representative Dusty Johnson of South Dakota. It's called the MOVE Act. It would lengthen the time of overweight exemptions in times of emergency from 4 months right now to 9 months. So quite a big jump there. Jamie, you recently wrote an op-ed on this. Mark and I are going to hand you the ball. We're going to sit back and we're going to watch you run with it, because I know you've got
sip on some tea.
Yeah, she's going to spill the tea, or I don't know how that goes. Maybe I didn't say that right. But anyway, Jamie, go.
Well, I just, here we are. We're in an election year, and so when you put this activity against that lens, Representative Dusty Johnson is doing his trucking constituents no good right now, and we'll get to the one good thing he is doing. Anyway, so last year in January of 2023, he introduced the Ship It Act, which did basically the same thing, only it broadened who can declare an emergency for overweight trucks to hit the roads, okay? And now we've got another piece of legislation that's going out there that extends the amount of time. So that's two bills in one Congress that this guy is going after, trying to increase truck weights in South Dakota. And, every time this argument comes up, it's such a slippery slope, because you have very successful business models out there on the overweight side. They have invested in the equipment. They have the expertise. They get them good rates for doing this because it is a niche, segment of the industry. You open that up to the Wild West of any trailer that hasn't cubed out to fill up beyond 80,000 gross vehicle weight, and that is going to cut the rates. That's going to be an economic loss to these people who are specialized in an overweight. And then, the safety aspect of heavier trucks take longer to brake and stop. And then we have roads that are in ill repair that cannot stand it. So, that's a bad idea right there. And so not only did he have the bad idea, he doubled down on stupid and introduced a second bill. So now let's turn around and look at speed limiters with the Drive Act. Guess who is not a co-sponsor on that piece of legislation? Yeah, Dusty Johnson is not. So we're going to fill up your trucks with more weight. We're going to slow you down to 60, 65, whatever number they might come up with on 80 mile per hour rural highways in South Dakota. I mean, it's just insane. So all of this is at the behest of ATA. You know, I
100%.
mean, you know, Chris Spears quoted in his press releases about these different pieces of legislation. The one thing he has done for truckers is he did sign on to the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. He did that initially, but ATA is also backing that bill too. So it just kind of makes you wonder, who's he really working for? Because he is the at-large representative for South Dakota. So every truck driver who lives in that state, he represents you.
So, Jamie, I feel like you're holding back a little bit. I'd like you to really tell us what you feel here.
When you look at lawmakers and how they serve your interest, you have to look at more than just your one hot button issue. And if you're going to look at whether or not you're going to vote to put him back in office, because he won election in 2018, he's been bumping around the halls of Congress. All of these overweight arguments that he's throwing out there for these bills has to do with the pandemic. Dude, you were in Congress when all hell broke loose during we shut down and all the panic buying. Where were these bills then? The thing was you couldn't get it drafted fast enough because everything kind of recovered and limped along, without it. So it's aggravating to see this kind of activity because it's the super PACs, it's something else is driving the issues because he's not listening to his constituents.
Well, and here's the thing, too, and we've seen this with and I always use air quotes here, the so-called driver shortage. These narratives that get out there and they do pick up steam. It's Dusty Johnson today. Is another lawmaker going to pick up on this? And this becomes the next kind of talking point, the next issue that sort of.
And I wonder where they're getting that driver shortage narrative from.
Yeah, well, that was my point. That's exactly my point. Is you wonder how these things are going to kind of become earworms for these lawmakers and become a talking point over and over again. And we've seen this, as you mentioned now, with Dusty Johnson. This issue has come up, twice now,
right.
I guess, with him. I'm not saying that this is going to become the driver shortage issue. My point is that this is one of these things that does, from time to time, pick up steam. So we may see more people grasp onto this issue and think it's a good idea.
It's kind of the pandemic and emergency declarations are kind of the new vogue way to justify weird legislation. The green arguments out there, and it's hard. Well, we don't want a good environment. That's kind of hard to argue against. The safety argument's always out there, and you have to be like, well, that's really not how it's going to work. Well, now we have emergencies. We need to be able to react quickly to that. Well, of course we do. Yeah. But 9 months. Come on. That's 3 seasons out of the year, basically, on roads that are not up for the task.
Yeah, and it's tricky on the surface, too, because when you first read it, somebody might out there think, oh, this gives more flexibility to truck drivers.
Right.
That sounds great. More flexibility is good. But when you point out all the other issues that come as a result of that, and we see a lot of these things in trucking all the time.
And they're pushing for different ways to increase weight. They've been doing it for years. This is just another tactic, another attempt to do it, and we'll say emergency on it. That's what it comes down to.
And the other side of it, and, it's a tough one because it is a complicated issue because we've been looking at emergency declarations and how we didn't have hours of service for so long. We had more flexibility in that and it proved to be safer. Yeah. You have to look at the specific issue, the specific regulation, and what are the unintended consequences of that going to be? Because, like I said, you're in an emergency, you have to be responsive to that. People need help, and we have to be able to find ways to do that. It's just when you start looking at the length of time on this one, on the overweight.
9 months.
Yeah, you got to start wondering, really, how much toilet paper are you're going to cube out on that before you even, so it's just, it's a BS argument on the surface when you really dig below it.
Well, Jamie, we'll get you back in here one day, and maybe you'll really just unload and tell us what you really think. But we'll get you out of your shy stage here.
Well, I'll try.
Jamie, Mark, a pleasure as always. Do yourself a favor. Go to landline.media. Check out Jamie's op-ed, which is on there now. Mark, thank you as well. We'll see you again next time.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
We've got to take a break, but stick around. We've got more Landline Now on the other side.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
And we're back with another edition of Roses and Razzberries. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Tyson Fisher here again. Guys, me, myself, I'm enjoying these a little bit warmer, sunny days. So I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty good. Tyson, how are you feeling these days?
Pretty good. Like I said, March is one of the best months of the year. Got spring, got baseball, March Madness.
Dude, March Madness,
Bats
you said it all, yeah.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, the temperature hits 60, and I bring the shorts out, too. So I'm that guy walking around in a hoodie and shorts.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. If it's 50 and up, that's shorts for me. So I don't know how you guys roll, but
seems us husky gentlemen prefer that route.
All right, well, just want to remind you again, if you do have an idea for a rose or raspberry here off the top, send them to roses@landlinemag.com. All right, let's go ahead and get started with one of those incredible rescue stories that we often talk about here on the show.
This one's went viral, so some of you may have heard about this, but we'll give a roses to Louisville, Kentucky firefighter Bryce Carden and the rest of the Louisville Fire Department for their just amazing rescue of a truck driver whose truck was hanging over the Clark Memorial Bridge in Louisville. So what happened was it was a multi-vehicle crash that caused this truck to crash through the barriers of this bridge, leaving the trucker stuck in the cab, which was just dangling over the Ohio River.
Nope,
it was just,
I'm out.
yeah, right.
I mean, let alone being in it, I just can't imagine coming across that scene. Had to be kind of like dumbfounded, like what's going on?
Yeah, I looked at footage of it. It's frightening, just incredible. But Carden, the firefighter, with the help of his fellow firefighters, they accessed the cab with like this rope and cable system, just like some a cliffhanger.
Right, exactly.
Going on there. And they hooked the driver up to a safety harness and they lifted her up to safety. The driver, who was a military veteran, was surprisingly, quote, cool as a cucumber, according to the Louisville fire
Wouldn't be
chief.
me, like
I would have been as
panicked,
unconscious as a cucumber.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would have been freaking out and crying, absolutely. But also, so everyone's giving kudos to the fire department, and rightfully so, but no one's giving roses to the kingpin manufacturers, So this isn't the first truck that has dangled from a bridge. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, the cab stays completely attached to the trailer every single time. It's just amazing. So those kingpins, they are built to last, and they withstand tests that they were just never designed for in the first place.
It's kind of one of those things, like if it does happen, you got it, but you don't want to find out if it actually works. But obviously, in this case, we're glad you don't want to be in that situation. I just think of myself, like, anytime I'm on a road trip or just traveling, like, over a long bridge over a body of water. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm speeding, but I'm definitely, like, the conversation increases, and I'm just, like, focused on everything else until I get across that bridge, because in my mind, I'm, like, I'm just thinking of all the crazy things that can happen on the road, especially on a bridge over water.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So, it had a fairly happy ending here, as much of a happy ending you could have in this situation.
That's right.
So.
See, it's an advertising point, too. Corrosion-free and can dangle over a large body of water. That's good. Well, you started it off with roses, but I'm getting ready to toss out some raspberries. And raspberries to this thief in Texas.
A terrifying heist caught on camera. A Brinks employee stripped down to his underwear at gunpoint at this Irving Chase Bank ATM. A masked robber ordering the armed victim to take off his gun belt and hand over a large bag full of money.
This is not something that happens in Irving. Actually, the Bricks employee himself told the officers that he was caught off guard, and he was caught so off guard because this is usually a very quiet route for him.
Irving police say the suspect followed the Brinks truck to the Chase Bank at Beltline and Rochelle from another location, striking after the worker pulled a bag full of an unknown amount of money from the ATM during his early morning runs. Police also expressing frustration that by the time anyone called 911 and officers got here, the brazen criminal was long gone.
Yes, the video will eventually probably be helpful to us, but we ask that you call 911 in those situations. That could have been the difference between officers getting there in time to apprehend the suspect.
And that audio courtesy of NBC5 in Dallas. But I mean, insult to injury. Not only do you have the absolute worst possible scenario for your job, then you get stripped down to your underwear in a public parking lot. Like, I don't really know. I don't know what to make of that. Also, I'm not quite certain if it was a premeditated act, like he thought, hey, I could get an extra step on this guy by taking his pants off, or if he just got caught up in the moment and said, you know what, you gave me all that money, give me your pants too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're not laughing at the individual who would go through this ordeal, but at the same time, it's like, it's kind of one of those things like I like a movie or something where it's like, you know, some, you know, violent criminals, you know, forcing people to, you know, just take whatever you want and, you know, in a bank of some sort. But yeah, I don't know. I guess my first thought would be, you know, maybe use that phone for something else rather than video.
Right. Well, and that's what they said. They said they got more copies of video than they did actual phone calls to 911 for the crime. Again, I will reemphasize this point, SJ. This is why my grandmother always told me to wear clean underwear.
And we hope that
situations like this, you just never know.
Yeah, we hope you've taken that advice throughout life. That's we're just going to leave it at that.
It's great advice.
Yeah, you know where, you know, speaking of the filming, it's, you know, just kind of become the thing to do. But I guess maybe I don't know, use it to call the phone like we said instead of just, you know, trying to go viral or, you know, get hits, whatever you're trying to do there. We talked about the weather before, and, you know, we're kind of coming up on spring here. So why don't we talk some baseball? Well, I mean, sort of.
Oh, yeah. There is a tie to baseball and trucking. So roses to minor league baseball team Albuquerque Isotopes for its continued support of truck drivers. So back in 2020, so during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, the Isotopes launched a campaign called We're Trucking With You. So basically, this campaign provided lunches and goodie bags to drivers to kind of show support to, you know, the men and women at the front lines during the pandemic. So at the time, you know, truckers were getting the shaft in terms of access to everyday necessities and whatnot. But if you remember, during the pandemic, lots of organizations and government officials, you know, they stood up for truckers. You know, at the time, it was just call it what it is. It was just good PR for a lot of these people. Since then, that support has kind of reverted back to pre-pandemic levels, but not with the Albuquerque Isotopes. So about 4 years later, after the peak of the pandemic, the Isotopes are still going strong with their We're Trucking With You campaign. This is in partnership with Dippin' Dots.
Is that still the ice cream of the future?
I think they probably got rid of that.
Like it is the future now.
I mean, it's been the future for 50 years now. Yeah.
The future is now might be the new tagline.
There you go.
Also, I'm not interested in the future if that's what ice cream is.
But yes, you got Dippin' Dots, Raising Cane's Chicken, and the New Mexico Trucking Association. So with this partnership, the Isotopes recently provided lunch for truckers. So I just think it's really cool to see these organizations with, you know, no direct connection to trucking show support for truckers, even when the, you know, quote unquote trend has well worn off. And that's the thing, support for truckers, it should never just be a trend. It should not ever be a PR stunt. You know, those who understand how important truckers are should show their support all the time, just like the Isotopes. So, you know, I don't really watch minor league baseball that much, but I'm rooting for the Isotopes for this year.
Wasn't that the name of the baseball team in The Simpsons?
I believe that's correct. That's the first
I think it was the Springfield Isotopes.
Well, and even just, you know, kind of along, you know, just to put a cap on this story here, like it's not, you don't have to do a lot always.
No,
you know, a small gesture goes a long way. Just to, I mean, show your appreciation and, you know, kind of the, you know, oftentimes we call it like the thankless job that's been done because, like you said, during, you know, those, you know, tough pandemic times, it was real easy for, you know, everyone to, you know, say how much, you know, you support him and you appreciate him, and that's kind of just gone to the back burner a little bit there again. But like you said, we'll be rooting for the isotopes. But
it's always nice to get a gentle reminder about those things.
Exactly.
Right?
Something we're not rooting for, though, is what's become of this ELD certification process. Ryan, I know you spent a lot of time kind of digging into these stories and what's kind of going on there.
I would say once every 2 or 3 months, we get a notification from FMCSA, and they pull a couple more ELDs off of the approved list, add them to the revoked list. And last week, they dropped 5 ELDs off of that approved list. The kicker was 2 of the 5 devices had already been previously removed and then added back on. It's because the process to get added back on once you're removed is essentially like a pinky swear that we fixed the issue. Right. So what'll happen is the agency removes the device from there. Then they have 30 days to get back to FMCSA and say, hey, here's what we're doing to fix it. Now, in the verbiage that mandates or regulates this, it's kind of ambiguous as to what, FMCSA has to request. They just say we can request whatever we feel necessary in order to determine that the device has been fixed. Well, let me tell you what. I have been covering these for the better part of 2.5 years now, and I have seen at least 6 different devices that were removed from the list, then were reinstated, and then were revoked again. So at this point, you have to start questioning not only the way that they're added to the list, because that's a self-certification process, but now what the heck are you doing when you add them back to the list? I emailed FMCSA. I was assured that they check it out. That was hey, we swear we're doing this, but really we're just going to have to take that on face value. So, I know that they say they check. The regulations are loose at best. And again, you have to self-certify in the first place to get on the list. Now, this, along with, OOIDA stance that, there needs to be a retooling or an overhaul of that process. I mean, I don't know how else you can look at it and say that this isn't just beyond repair and you need to kind of throw it out and start something new.
I mean, calling it a process might even just be a stretch, because it kind of sounds like there's no rhyme or reason to what's going on here. It's just kind of like whenever they see fit and kind of at their whim. And I guess unfortunately, that's the case with a lot of regulations. You're kind of at the whim of those making calling the shots.
Well, and for something that if you were in violation of could cost you, money, time on the road, you're getting placed out of service. Like, if you have to maintain compliance, then you should probably have some type of checks and balances to make sure that the devices you're requiring everybody to have are compliant. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
All right, well, we do have a few more raspberries here to come around. And earlier we talked about, people kind of, pulling them phones out for video purposes, that is. And I'm assuming that some video may have been taken of this next story here, Tyson.
Yeah, I'm all out of roses here. So, raspberries to a man that stole a car hauler transporting more than $1 million worth of Chevy C8 Corvettes. So, this theft occurred at the Wilcox, Arizona love stop off I-10, where the truck driver was talking to the suspect. After the conversation, the suspect grabbed the truck driver as he was climbing back into his truck and then took off with the expensive cargo. So, on the surface, this sounds like a thief trying to steal expensive cargo. Kind of makes sense, $1 million worth of cars. However, so this is what happened, though. The Cochise County Sheriff's Office eventually caught up with the stolen truck and was able to arrest the truck thief. While being questioned, the suspect said that he just needed a ride home from prison.
I'm sorry, what?
Right. He just got out of prison, didn't have a ride home, so his thought was, I'll just steal this, this car hauler. So anyway, this guy couldn't even make it home without committing another felony. It's as crazy as it sounds. It is.
That's kind of an interesting rationale.
Did he enjoy prison or something?
Yeah. He couldn't wait to get back. Right?
That wasn't that bad at all.
I'm guessing the judge isn't going to go light on his next prison sentence.
I mean, I'm assuming you don't come out with a lot of funds in your pocket, but maybe an Uber or call a cousin, a friend, and anything, and then you go from not only just from that kind of stealing an expensive type of cargo, so you're kind of doubling it there. But obviously, like you said, this guy's not gonna be out for long. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Roses and Raspberries. Ryan, Tyson, thanks for coming in, guys.
Yeah, sorry I didn't actually have any roses to hand out this week. Now I look at it.
And I was just thinking, I'm going to Matt, so I might have to cross that Louisville Bridge, so I'll be freaking out.
Oh, God, I didn't think about that.
Right?
Just kind of close your eyes and hum or sing a song in your head. That's usually what I do. Again, if you have an idea for a rose or raspberry, please send them to roses@landlinemag.com. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit houseproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. The Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance recently announced the dates for its annual Roadcheck Safety Blitz. To get an idea of what truckers need to know about the annual event, I spoke with CVSA roadside inspection specialist Jeremy Disbrow. Let's start with a basic definition here. I think a lot of folks are obviously familiar with Roadcheck because it's been going on for so long, but there's always new people, and I think we ought to at least give them a definition the first time they hear the term. What is Roadcheck in simple terms?
Roadcheck is an annual enforcement campaign. It's a high visibility, high enforcement campaign that joins together to conduct enforcement for a 72-hour period, as well as provide educational opportunities. So many states will partner with local organizations and industry members to allow them to participate, ask questions, use it as a learning experience as well. But basically, it's an enforcement campaign across the North American continent, including Mexico, Canada, and the U.S.
What are the dates this year for Roadcheck?
This year's Roadcheck is actually going to be held on May 14th through the 16th.
Okay. And we always talk about how many inspectors are out there, what kind of inspectors, what they're going to be doing. Can you give us kind of an idea of how many and what they're generally going to be doing out there?
So it's kind of an all hands on deck deal when they get this going. I don't know an exact number, obviously, of how many inspectors are going to participate, but every jurisdiction typically does. They're conducting level 1 inspections, which is a full inspection, including inspecting the driver's credentials, hours of service, and the vehicle components, everything from steering to brakes to tires, that kind of stuff as well. In addition to that, like I said, they also provide educational outreach in many jurisdictions where they set up trailers, answer questions for industry, things like that as well.
I know that every year they have a particular focus for each year's Roadcheck, and I'm wondering what the focus is this year.
So this year actually is going to have two focus areas. One is relating to the driver, and the other is relating to the vehicle maintenance portion. So in a nutshell, the driver portion is focusing on drug and alcohol issues, specifically in the United States, dealing with the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, just because that's kind of been something that is causing difficulties for drivers, as well as enforcement personnel sometimes. And the other one is going to be on the vehicle maintenance side, which is focusing on the braking system, which is specifically the tractor protection valve on the truck tractor.
Why did CVSA pick those two particular factors to focus on this year?
So CVSA doesn't really select it. There's actually a committee that gets together with CVSA. We discuss what we're seeing on the industry side as well as the enforcement side, and we try to focus it on common issues that are being seen, as well as what educational outreach opportunities there are. So like for Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, when I said enforcement is struggling with it sometimes, it's because it's a newer thing, database that they have to check, and there hasn't been great compliance with it in the past, and it's getting much better, but we're trying to raise awareness on it, basically.
In the release that CVSA put out regarding Roadcheck, they said something, I want to read it here. The number of prohibited drivers listed in the U.S. Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse has been increasing. And obviously increasing is a very general term. You could go from 0.5% to 1% of all drivers, and that could be increasing, or it could be a larger number. Can you give us an idea of what percentage of the driving population is prohibited? Even if it's not a specific figure, just a general sense of what we're talking about?
I don't really have a percentage. I can't answer that for you without doing a little bit of research. What I can tell you is it's pushing upwards of getting close to 100,000 prohibited drivers. I think last time I checked, it was in the 80,000 something range. Yeah, I think there could be a lot of reasons for that. I think some drivers just may not be aware of certain things that they're taking, or if they go to a party on the weekend and they're using marijuana or something because it's legal in their state, they're maybe forgetting that they're still subject to the random drug and alcohol testing and pre-employment testing, and it ends up causing them problems with their careers, and we don't want that. We want to raise awareness for that as well. So
I want to go back to the overall inspections rather than the focus here. And we often talk about the level 1 inspection, but we don't often talk about what's exactly involved in a level 1. Can you kind of give us an explanation when someone faces a level 1 during Roadcheck? What are they actually going to go through?
Well, the neat thing about the procedure is it's standardized throughout all 3 countries that participate. And what it does is it's a 37-step procedure. If any of your listeners or viewers want to look it up, they can go to our website and see exactly what's included in that inspection. It's cvsa.org. But in a nutshell, it starts with the driver selecting a safe location to conduct a traffic stop. They interview the driver. They're going to ask for their CDL if it's applicable, hours of service if that's applicable. Interview the driver, look for signs of impairment, obviously this time around, especially with that being a focus area. Once they get through the driver portions of it, they're going to focus more on the vehicle, where the driver's going to operate the controls and check everything from the front to the back of that truck and trailer combination: lights, steering, tires, frame components, all that. And then in a level 1, they're also going to crawl underneath the truck or use a pit to get underneath the truck and examine the brakes, take measurements and everything. The nice thing about it is when they pass the inspection, as long as there's no critical inspection items that are discovered, they'll get a CVSA decal, which they place on the windshield of the vehicle. And that basically precludes them from having another full level 1 inspection for about 3 months is what it comes down to. Unless something obvious is identified, obviously, that's a safety concern.
I'm wondering if you can give us an idea here of all the things that are being checked in that level 1. Do you know what the most common violation is that people run into out on the road? Something that maybe they should be focusing on before we get to Roadcheck?
Sure. Well, as you can imagine, an officer sitting in the median on a highway watching traffic go by at 70 miles an hour, it's hard to see a lot of things. So the most common violations are the ones that are easy to pick at speeds like that. Things like lights that are out, reflective tape that's missing, items like that just really stand out. ABS lights on trailers are very obvious a lot of the time because they light up. So that's what's going to catch their attention. So of course, that's going to be a more common thing that's cited. Once the vehicle's stopped, I think tires and braking components tend to be pretty much the highest issues that they're seeing out there, though.
I've often been told brakes out of adjustment is one of the big violation areas.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time in a pre-trip inspection, obviously drivers aren't crawling under their truck every single day and measuring their brakes and stuff. So it's understandable. But definitely it's important to have a maintenance routine in place that checks that on a regular basis. And the other thing on that message that causes a lot of issues is a lot of drivers have automatic slack adjusters, as is required after 1994. And they tend to rely on those automatic slack adjusters to do the job for them. And that's not always the case. So it's important to actually get your hands and your eyes on it.
I want to kind of look back a little bit, if you don't mind. Obviously, there was a different focus last year. What was the focus last year, and what results did you get from that focus?
Last year's Roadcheck was focusing on ABS systems and cargo securement were the 2 issues that they were looking at last year.
What kind of results generally did you get out of that?
Well, the ABS systems, there's certainly quite a few violations, but that is not an out of service violation. So we weren't, obviously placing vehicles out of service for it. But it did raise awareness of the importance of ABS systems and the prevalence of those violations. Last year, I know there was a lot of discussion about during the actual event, I heard a lot of reports that they didn't see a lot of enforcement out there. But surprisingly, we ended up having more inspections conducted last year than the previous year. So they were definitely out there. And then cargo securement was the other big issue that they were looking at. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but there was a significant number of cargo securement violations out there.
Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. I sure appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
That was Jeremy Disbrow, a roadside inspection specialist for CVSA, talking about the Alliance's annual Roadcheck Safety Blitz scheduled for May 14th through the 16th. If you want to make your voice heard on any of the important issues we discuss here on the show, call your members of Congress. The phone number is 202-224-3121. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.